What's happening in Mississippi from MPB Think Radio? This is The Sit Down with Russ Latino, where we explore the ideas and people that are shaping Mississippi's future. We've had some great guests in recent weeks, but we thought we'd take a little pause this week, particularly as we do Pledge Drive this week for Mississippi Public Broadcasting, to talk a little bit about a potpourri of issues that are going on in our state, outside of our state. Obviously, big municipal elections across the state of Mississippi last night. Lots of interesting outcomes unfolding, both in central Mississippi and really across the state. There were upsets in other parts of the state. There's intrigue heading into some runoffs in different parts of the state. So we'll get into some of that. Also talk a little bit about what's going on in the legislature right now. They are near the end of session. There is the potential that they actually close out the session today early and then have to come back for a special session to figure out the state's budget, which is a pretty big deal. We'll get into some of the mechanics associated with that, some of the dynamics of what's going on between the House and the Senate right now, and, you know, how likely government is to be funded. The answer is it's going to be funded. It just may involve some drama first. And then we've got this Liberation Day thing going on, coming down from Washington, D.C., as President Trump seeks to impose up to 20% tariffs on all items imported into the United States. What does that mean for people in Mississippi? What does that mean for you when you go to Walmart? What does it mean for the farmers that grow our food and the people who build our cars and all the advanced manufacturing in the state? We'll dig into some of that too. But before we get into all of that heavy mess, because some of that's a little heavy, I figured it's worth mentioning that it is an awesome time to be a Mississippian. It is beautiful outside today. We are in that season where baseball is back. I don't know if anybody who listens is a big baseball fan. It is my personal favorite sport. And so there's something to be said for the relaxing pace of a baseball game. And, you know, kind of getting into the nerdy rules and statistics and all that. So happy time for me. Being a South Mississippi boy originally, we got crawfish on deck for a few more weeks at least. Obviously, Easter is coming up. There's a lot of good stuff. There's an opportunity, as the young folks say, to go out and touch grass. I will say this, though. My grass, Germaine, pretty ugly right now.
Mine looks beige.
Well, the grass itself is beige, but then I have this nice layer of green stuff that is not grass.
That's that mossy looking stuff.
All over my yard, including some nice yellow flowers that my daughter thinks are very pretty, but are in fact weeds all over the yard, tree limbs all over the yard. This is the time of year, Lacey and Kevin, where I'm reminded that there is some real value in zero lot lines.
That's right. That's right.
When we move back, and Lacey and Kevin are just nodding. They're choosing not to be on air right now.
It's the fourth wall.
They're sitting here with me. I'm going to goad them into saying something eventually is my goal here.
It's a prompt.
See, you got to turn him on.
Kevin.
He's trying.
Okay, Kevin, try.
I've got to take her.
Russ, the yellow flowers drive me crazy. I've got two kind of weeds, the yellow ones and the white ones. And it's made me mow my lawn more than I probably would have already this season. But the crazy thing is, you know, to me, there's nothing like a freshly mowed lawn. You're working hard, you're sweating, and then when you finish, you look, wow, doesn't my yard look great? And like the next day you've got those yellow flowers popping back up.
There is a real sense of accomplishment, though, and then I will get on to some serious stuff, but there's a real sense of accomplishment when you finish mowing your lawn and edging the sidewalks and all of that, and you think to yourself, maybe while drinking a cold pop or cold beverage, wow, I've done something. Like there's actually a sense of real accomplishment. And then to your point, yes, the weeds pop back up. Not just the yellow weeds. We also have these thorns of death. You know,
I dig those up with a shovel. I make it my point to find them. I hunt for those.
All over the place, just all over the place this year. So anyway, the short version is I need to listen to the Gestalt Gardener and figure out what I'm doing wrong. And the other part of that is that I literally just need to get off my butt and do some yard work. But to the original point, it's a great time to be a Mississippian. And Mississippians headed to the polls yesterday, which I think is also a great thing because we should have a say in how our cities are run. You know, we'll talk a little bit about state politics a little bit later, and we're going to talk a little bit about federal politics a little bit later. But what most people maybe don't appreciate, particularly if all you do is watch cable news or you're on X or you're you're jonesing on political info. Oftentimes that's at a national level or state level. And we put so much focus on those things. But the decisions that really impact our lives are primarily decisions that happen in our communities. And some of those are decisions that happen in our communities that are politically driven, right? Mayors and city councils making decisions. And some of them have nothing to do with government, right? It's like, how do neighbors work with other neighbors, right? What's going on in our communities? And so municipal elections are really, really important, even though they're not very sexy. And so you tend to see lower turnout, right? You look at a presidential race, extremely high turnout. You look at a municipal race, much lower turnout. But in some ways, those elections affect your life more than the big elections that draw all of the attention and all the fervor from folks across the political spectrum. And so what we saw yesterday was in a lot of places, mayors ran unopposed. And so you didn't have a lot of hotly contested elections. I know in central Mississippi, as an example, you've got an unopposed election in Gluckstadt, Mississippi, which is up in Madison County. You had an unopposed election in Madison, the city, where Mayor Mary Hawkins Butler has been mayor for, ever. And those elections didn't draw any actual opposition. That wasn't the case in the capital city, right? The Jackson mayoral race drew, I think, 19 total competitors. When you look at the 12 that ran in the Democratic primary, there were several in the Republican primary, and then I think there are several independents running as well. But I think most of the focus in that Jackson race has been on the Democratic primary, and for obvious reasons, it's on the Democratic primary. If you look at historical trends in the city of Jackson, the next mayor will be a Democrat. And that's just representative of the city's public and population. And so a lot of attention was paid to that race. And I think a lot of attention was also paid to that race in part because of the conversation that's going on around current mayor Chokwe Antar Lumumba and his challenger in this case, Senator John Horhn. So what we saw in that election last night was that Senator John Horhn, who had run for mayor before in Jackson and had not scratched really, outperformed in a pretty incredible way. And so if you look at it, I think he had something like 11,909 votes, which is a lot of votes, relative to where everybody else was. So Senator Horhn finished with about 48.5% of the vote, which was short of what he needed to avoid a runoff in a very crowded field. The next highest competitor and his runoff opponent, the current mayor, Mayor Lumumba, finished with about 16%, a little north of 16%. And so you're talking about a race where the challenger outperformed the incumbent by a 3-1 margin, which is pretty incredible heading into the runoff. Now, in a runoff, it's anybody's guess. You would look at those numbers and you would just assume that Senator Horhn is probably going to win the day based on those numbers. But you never know on turnout. You never know what happens in terms of messaging over the next 3 weeks. Crazy things can happen, but it sure looks like Jackson has made a decision to change course. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that part of that decision-making process, part of what we saw from voters yesterday, very likely is a reaction to some of the stuff that has happened over the last term in office, where you've got the water crisis with federal intervention, where you've got homicide rates that led the nation, where you've got street and infrastructure problems that aren't necessarily being addressed, where you've got the garbage crisis, and then obviously where you've got this federal bribery scandal that I think has cast a pall over a lot of Jackson elected officials. So what we see then is an opportunity now for Jackson to make a decision about the direction it heads in the future. We'll see where that goes. You're listening to the Sit Down on MPB Think Radio. The Spring On Air fundraiser campaign is on. It's important that MPB hears from you while you have a few minutes to spare. Joining me in studio are Kevin Farrell, who you've already heard from, and Lacey Alexander to talk a little bit about how your contribution makes a difference.
Thank you, Russ. You're listening to MPB Think Radio. I'm Lacey Alexander. This is a nonprofit public radio station made possible chiefly by the listeners who fund it through campaigns like this one. People from all over are taking a stand for thought-provoking news, fun and entertaining weekend programs, and shows that make a difference in their lives. This is your invitation to do the same. With me today is my friend Kevin Farrell.
Thanks, Lacey, and good morning. It's never a gamble when you tune to MPB Think Radio during the week with shows like The Sit Down, Creature Comforts, Autocorrect, and Southern Remedy on the air. Thousands of people help us build MPB's program service over the years. That's why our theme for this spring is Together through the years, together in the future. Your contribution helps us cover the news, produce local programs with local experts, and acquire other programs to share with you during the weekends. Takes about 3 minutes to do your part. We're asking you to call 888-372-4483. That's where you can also text the word GIVE to do your part. Again, the number 888-372-4483, or go online and make a contribution at mpbonline.org.
As part of MPB's Digital First initiative, our program Everyday Tech is now exclusively a podcast that you can access via our website or through the MPB app on your phone, and also 2 seasons of the 10-Minute Time Out, our sports program, are also available as a podcast, and that host is pretty cool and nice and cute, if I do say so myself. On the radio, you come to MPB through digital. We come to you wherever you are. When you make a contribution today, you'll help us meet the needs of audiences near and far.
By the way, who is the host of 10 Minute Timeout, Lacey?
It's a woman named Lacey.
And you do a great job on that. I enjoy that.
Thank you, Kevin.
You know, when you support MPB at $5 a month or more, you'll get a free member benefit called PBS Passport. It offers access to an on-demand library of quality public television programs. Some programs are available only on Passport. You can watch hundreds of hours of PBS programming on demand, including masterpiece series like All Creatures Great and Small, the new season of Miss Scarlet, episodes of Nova, Nature, and American Experience. And you can get some of the classic MPB television series as well. The reason we can offer you Passport is because MPB Radio and TV are family. You will be too with this special benefit. If you're not already a member with Passport access, we're asking you to call and sign up. It's 888-372-4483. You can do it online at mpbonline.org.
Maybe it's time for you to renew your support of $1,000 or more. Same as our donors at every level. We're grateful for each and every one of you. But if you're not currently giving $1,000 or more to MPB and you have the capacity to do so, we would love to hear from you. We'll invest it in programs that will impact you. You can easily join or renew your membership by giving us a quick call, 888-372-4483, or by going online right now at mpbonline.org.
Giving online at mpbonline.org or by phone takes just a few minutes. We're asking you to maybe take an extra minute to leave a comment because we'd love to read them on the air. Cindy from Ocean Springs says, I love listening to the programs while driving. I'd like to have more financial literacy, especially for young people. Paula from Tupelo chips in and says, I listen to MPB every single day. It's wonderful and I love it.
Aww.
We appreciate you sharing those thoughts, Cindy and Paula. But we're asking everyone now to do their part at 888-372-4483 to show your support. As we mentioned, you can also take about 3 minutes and do it online. Go to mpbonline.org. You can also see the wonderful thank you gifts that we have to offer there. So make your contribution, and we say thank you for your financial support.
You're listening to the Sit Down with Russ Latino right here on MPB Think Radio, breaking fourth walls, talking about municipal elections. Obviously, what MPB does is important. There's a great diversity of programming on the station, and that's valuable, I think. Mississippi as a state is an incredibly diverse place. There are people from very different backgrounds, very different work environments, different experiences, and different points of view. And it's important that I think that a station like MPB represents all of those points of view and gives voice to all of those points of view. And so I think it does a good job of that throughout the course of the day, and certainly would encourage people who are listening to make that voluntary commitment to support what the station is doing. We were talking before the break a little bit about municipal elections, and just wanted to close on this thought. Obviously, Jackson is not the only city in the state of Mississippi. It gets a lot of attention, sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes for the wrong reasons. Sometimes that attention is fair, and sometimes that attention is unfair. But what I would say is that obviously it is our capital city, and we need a strong capital city for the rest of Mississippi to thrive. During the course of the water crisis, I had an experience where my phone blew up with text messages and emails from people asking if we had access to clean water. And, I live 30 minutes away from Jackson. But in the minds of people who lived outside the state of Mississippi, Jackson is Mississippi. And so I think that's one of the reasons it draws the attention that it draws. I think the other part of this, and this is just a reality, is if you look at states that are thriving, they have cities that are thriving. that are growing, that are cultural hubs, and Jackson has the potential to do all of that and be all of that. And so, the hope, at least from my vantage point, is that people really make a commitment, both inside and outside of Jackson, to continue building it into what it can be to reach its potential. I'd say, though, that there are other races outside of that conversation about the Jackson mayor race. There was a race in Brandon yesterday where Butch Lee, the incumbent, faced up against State Representative Fred Shanks. Butch Lee won that race. That was a high-profile race given the size of that population. The turnout was certainly very high given the size of that population, and also because the challenger was a legitimate challenger with some political credentials. Oftentimes you see incumbents face off against a challenger, but maybe they don't come with a lot of their own sort of political base. That wasn't true for Representative Shanks. I'd say also, though, that there were some upsets. If you look at Ocean Springs as an example, the Ocean Springs incumbent lost. Most of the city council in Ocean Springs lost. There were several instances like that along the coast where there were upsets. There are also some toss-ups out there. The city of Gulfport, which is the state's second largest city, has an open seat with Mayor Billy Hughes, who's done an excellent job for a number of years stepping down. And so you see a race there between Hugh Keating, who is the Republican nominee, and Sonia Williams-Barnes, who's a legislator, who's the Democratic nominee. That will be an important race. There are a handful of those around the state that are worth paying attention to for the reason that I said before the break, which is that so much of what happens in our lives is actually not impacted by federal and state decisions and is impacted on a day-to-day basis by what happens in our communities. I'll shift, though, to talking a little bit about what's going on in the state right now. So you may or may not have heard that there normally is something called conference weekend that happens in the legislature towards the end of the session. And conference weekend is essentially the time where the two chambers, who maybe haven't agreed on everything throughout the course of the session, but there are bills that are still alive, they get together in what are literally conferences. The House will appoint 3 conferees. The Senate appoints 3 conferees on each and every bill that's still alive that's been sent to conference. And they get together, they huddle, and they work out what the final terms of those bills are. And then they go back to their chambers and they present what the conferees have agreed to for an up or down vote. That really happens with general bills a little earlier, and then with budget bills typically during conference weekend, which should have occurred this past weekend. What actually occurred this past weekend is that the Mississippi House of Representatives went home and did not engage in conference weekend the way that has typically occurred. Now, House Speaker Jason White has said that for 2 solid years, essentially that he warned that he wanted to change the way the budgeting process is done in Mississippi. Mississippi's budget is over $7 billion, the general fund budget that the legislature gets to decide. And his point of view is that those decisions should not be rushed at the very end of session, that they should spend time leading up to the end of session, working on those so that there aren't last-minute decisions, things getting snuck into bills, votes happening where people feel like they've got no choice but to vote for something. And so basically said, hey, I've told you a couple times we don't want to keep doing it this way, so we're not gonna. And the Senate's response was essentially, well, you're derelict in your duty, right? You're not doing what has to be done in order to get budgets passed by the end of the year. This is a big deal. Obviously, budgets are essentially passed so that they start taking effect on July 1st. So you've got a little bit of time, but typically they reach a conclusion or a deal by the end of the year on what the budget looks like. So what does all that mean? Well, in short version, what it means is that right now, if you're a state agency, you aren't guaranteed a budget for next year, assuming that they don't come to terms in the next little while. House Speaker Jason White has said that he plans on adjourning today if the Senate's not willing to extend the session and deal with the budget bills. And that would require Governor Tate Reeves to call a special session, which he is kind of loath to do historically. The reason that he's loath to do it is because it costs money for the state. It's about $100,000 a day by the time you pay per diems and the expense of operating the legislature. And so he typically has not been willing to do that. Presumably, though, one thought process would be that if you call adjournment today, which is earlier than what they were supposed to sine die, get out of session, that he could call the special session and really not add any days to the legislature's planned operation. But we'll see how all that unfolds. We're at a time in session, for those of you who are new to this, where tempers are starting to flare. The nature of politics, particularly in sort of temporary legislatures, the way that we have one, meets January through March, is that by the end of that 3 or 4 month period, people are a little tired of each other. Stuff has been killed. Stuff the Senate really thought were great bills have been killed by the House. And stuff the House thought were really excellent bills have been killed by the Senate. And so in that environment, folks are kind of testy. They're kind of a little upset at each other. And I think they're in a mindset that says, hey, how do we get one up on the other guy? Some of that, too, is a byproduct of the fact that we've got supermajority Republican chambers in both chambers of the legislature. The nature of that is that at some point, people start to feel like they're competing within their own party for success. And because of that, you start to see differences in ideology emerge. People get more vocal about those differences in ideology. And that is some of what we are experiencing this year in the legislature. What I know is this, though. If you're sitting here listening going, well, that sounds chaotic. That doesn't sound particularly good. It's the nature of the process. I always encourage young people who are getting involved in politics to be patient with the process, because at some point they will in fact agree to a budget. They're not going to not agree to a budget. And within a month or so, after all of this is said and done, and people get their feelings out of whack, what will happen is that they'll calm down, they'll go back to their communities, they'll go back to their jobs and their families, and everything will be all right. They'll take a deep breath. You're listening to Sit Down with Russ Latino right here on MPB Think Radio. We're going to take another break to talk about the spring pledge drive.
You're listening to MPB Think Radio. I'm Lacey Alexander. I want to thank you for being a listener. Now I'm inviting you to be a supporter. You'll make a difference in your own life and the lives of others, including young children whose brains continue to grow through MPB Kids television and digital learning programs. The lives you change with one contribution we can't even count. With details on how to lend a hand, here's Kevin Farrell.
Thanks, Lacey, and good morning. You know, you make MPB Think Radio better every day through your financial support. During the week, we delve a little bit deeper into ideas that help you understand the world even better. Healthcare, gardening, cool places to visit Mississippi, and so much more. MPB Think Radio is here for you, and because of your ongoing support for public radio, we're here to inspire and entertain you. So do what you can, please. Your community will be grateful. I hope they'll do that right now. We're ready to take your call at 888-372-4483, or you can contribute online. It's mpbonline.org.
At MPB, we truly know the meaning of community. We connect you with experts in a number of areas who provide you opportunities to engage. From asking questions about the law, personal finance, or my personal favorite, home improvement, to sharing secret family recipes or gardening ideas with fellow listeners. The rare thing is that MPB is one of the few public radio stations in the country to offer live and local programs like this each week day from 9 to noon. Well, how can that be? Well, it's mainly because you support it through listening, calling, and by giving during our drive times like this. Please make a contribution right now.
Some great things happen when you make a contribution to MPB Think Radio. You support a station that exists to make you smarter from the first moment you wake up in the morning. Your generosity extends far beyond your own four walls and out into the community at large. We can help you meet some of your charitable investing goals with a donation right now. So if you can, consider making a contribution of $500 or maybe $1,000. We'll take your call at 888-372-4483 or go online. It's mpbonline.org.
Make a contribution of $180 right now to support everything you hear on MPB Think Radio. And we will say thank you with our new MPB Spring Bundle. It includes the new dark blue MPB baseball cap, a set of twinkly MPB wind chimes, and our campfire mug. Wherever you go this spring, you can show the world you love being a supporter of radio that makes you smarter every time you listen. We'll send you the MPB Spring Bundle when you invest $15 a month as a sustainer or $180 all at once. Call or text the word GIVE to this number, 888-372-4483. 888-372-4483. That's 888-372-4483, or donate right now at mpbonline.org.
The beauty of becoming a sustainer is knowing that month after month you're having a positive impact on your own life and from people that you'll never meet. That's why philanthropy is all about recognizing a need in the community and stepping up to do something about it. Sustainers enjoy the ease of making monthly gifts that automatically renew. So your $10, $15, or $25 a month allows you to manage your membership without having to do anything but set it up once. So call or text the word GIVE to 888-372-4483, or you can become a sustainer online at mpbonline.org.
Sorry, go ahead, Kevin.
No, you got it. Go.
Are you sure?
Go ahead.
MPB has a new way for you to make your contribution on a mobile device. Just text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to 888-372-4483. Yes, that's MPB's pledge line number, 888-372-4483. It's easier than shopping on your mobile device. Try it out. Text the word GIVE to 888-372-4483.
You're listening to The Sit Down right here on MPB Think Radio. I'm your host, Russ Latino. Today we're talking a potpourri of issues, from municipal elections to what's going on in the state legislature, all the way to Liberation Day, as we're being told. We're also obviously doing a pledge drive. Lacey and Kevin are pretending like they're not in the studio with me, but they are in fact sitting here, smiling, having fun. I can tell. Kevin said something, Germaine, during the pitch, that I think it's important, is that you get smarter when you listen to MPB, which I need.
That's right.
You may not need that because you wake up very, very smart.
I do, but let me tell you what I learned this morning on Fix It 101. Wasps do not have blood.
Is that right?
Yes. Kevin, tell him.
That's right. Bees and wasps do not have. But I wanted to circle back for just a minute because something that you said at the beginning of the show caught my ear, and that is you're a baseball fan. And if people could see, my water bottle has a New York Mets sticker on it. So I'm wondering, Russ, who is your favorite baseball team?
See, this is where it gets ugly because what I'm about to say will prompt a little bit of a rivalry here. I'm a New York Yankees fan.
I was going to, okay.
Lacey, I'm breaking the fourth wall. Who's your team?
I watch college softball.
Oh, okay.
I don't watch MLB. Sorry.
So my dad grew up a Yankees fan. My dad's an Italian guy. They had a bunch of Italian players when he was a little boy. And like a lot of little boys, you kind of grow up watching the team that your dad watches. And so I became a Yankees fan very early in life, back when they weren't yet good again, and then got to experience the great run with Joe Torre. And obviously they're pretty decent again. And now they've got these wonderful bats.
That's right. That's the new rage in the majors this year so far.
Torpedo bats, yeah. So they're hitting a lot of dingers. It'll be fun to watch this season, though.
Yeah.
You get to go to many games?
I've been to Citi Field a couple of times. My brother lives up in New York City, so when I visit, he's not a big baseball fan, but he puts up with me and we go to the game. The other thing I think about is my grandfather was a Yankees fan, and so it was great to talk to him, but someone who actually was able to see Babe Ruth and the famous Yankees actually play, so that was always exciting.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And then I'm excited about, the M Braves left, but we've got a new minor league team coming to Pearl with, I think they're called the Mississippi Mud Monsters. So local baseball back in the metro area. That's really exciting to me.
I always wonder how they come up with names for minor league teams. It's like that game Ad Lib you played when you were a kid, right? We're just going to throw a bunch of words together, spin the wheel, combine them.
Words that make you think of Mississippi, mud bugs.
Yeah, something like that might have worked. But so I have been to both Old Yankee Stadium and New Yankee Stadium, but I've also been to Citi Field and Shea before that. And so my one game at Shea, as I remember it, I believe this or not, I did an internship at the United Nations for the nation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's a wild story. But while I was there, I went to a Mets-Braves game. This was right after John Rocker made his comments about the New York subway. And so it was a wild experience hearing New Yorkers just yelling "Rocker sucks" over and over again. Am I allowed to say "sucks" on the radio? Is that acceptable? I got the thumbs up on that. So
We've got a disclaimer.
People think they're getting politics with this show, but really they're just going to get baseball.
That's okay.
No, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Well, the thing I remember about Shea Stadium, it had those sort of metal the orange metal things with sectioning off different seats. I think I saw a couple of games, again, visiting my brother up there. But actually, the Trustmark Park to me is a great way to watch the game. And the thing about baseball is what you said earlier. The pace is so slow that you can go to the game, you can socialize with your friends while you're there, and not lose track of what's going on. To me, the antithesis of that is basketball, to where it's up and down, so you better got to pay attention. But baseball has that gentle, relaxed pace that is really exciting.
Yeah, well, it's that same pace. Like football, for instance, you have commercial breaks where you have those moments. But with baseball, it is a consistent pace, right? Where you are able to talk to the people around you. I have made great friends with people who are cheering for opposing teams in baseball. There's a different attitude amongst baseball fans versus like going down to Tiger Stadium or Death Valley in Baton Rouge for a football game. Chances are you're not going to make friends with people seated around you if you're not cheering for the Tigers. That doesn't happen in baseball. Even with college baseball, that's true. We went to Omaha several years back when Ole Miss won the College World Series, and everybody around us, no matter which team they were associated with, were so pleasant, and it was such a cool experience. I highly encourage people to become baseball fans. Your blood pressure won't be high. You won't scream at the television.
I was one for a minute, but I had a thing about Derek Jeter. And so I had every New York Yankee jersey.
See?
And didn't watch a lick of the game.
You just like Jeter.
Yes.
For his winning personality?
I was taking the teen books, and they'd have them in there, and I'd slap him on the wall. The Jeter posters everywhere.
How old were you during this?
I was probably
this phase?
about maybe 13 to 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
This wasn't towards the end of his career.
No, it was right at the top of it before he started dating Mariah Carey and broke my heart. Yes.
Well, he clearly made the wrong choice, Germaine.
He did, Russ.
What we know. I think he went through a series of high-profile relationships, as I recall. Other people also thought he had a winning personality. So, there you go. What were we talking about? Oh, the legislature, that thing. I was just saying before the break, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, a lot of negative news about sort of disagreements between the chambers. All that stuff will work out in the wash. People just need to calm down. The other thing, I was thinking about this the other day, Germaine, is like, obviously there are real disagreements in our state about how to do certain things, disagreements on individual pieces of policy or whatever. And there are real challenges the state's got to overcome too, right? Like, I've never been Pollyannish about the fact that there are things that Mississippi needs to fix. Mm-hmm. But the state has done some really cool things too. Yeah. And even from a public policy standpoint, in 2003, the state was operating with $700 million a year in annual deficits. The last several years, we've been operating with billion-plus surpluses. This year, it'll be about $700 million surplus. So the state's budget, once they get one put together, is really in order from a fiscal standpoint. The legislature's paid off like $1 billion in debt over the last 4 years, which puts us on pretty good footing. And then you've got all this stuff going on with economic development, right? So I did not anticipate this from Governor Reeves, because in the past, I've always thought of him as being like a wonky policy guy. But he has become like a prolific economic developer in terms of going out and bringing in companies. And you see that with the high-profile ones like, Amazon, the Compass Data Center folks, $26 billion of investments in those two deals alone, which dwarfs everything in the past. Just those two deals alone dwarf everything if you added it up together in the past.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And the end result of that is, and people will think that I'm being crazy right now, this last quarter of 2024, Mississippi had the second fastest growing economy in the entire country. That's
Come
not
on now. Pat on the back.
That's not Russ logic. That's like Bureau of Economic Analysis.
You didn't say second to the last.
No.
Yeah.
The second fastest growing economy.
I want everybody to know.
In the country.
Yeah.
And then you look at what's been achieved from an education standpoint. I know you know the education space very well, Germaine.
Yeah.
The Mississippi Miracle, I know people grimace at that phraseology because they're like, it's not a miracle. It was a lot of hard work, and I know it was. But the Mississippi Miracle is an incredible accomplishment for families, for students, for teachers, for administrators on up. That if you look at this period over the last 10 years, you're looking at a period where we've gone from being dead last in reading, dead last in math, to now having the 9th highest scores in the nation in reading, the 16th highest scores in math. And oh, by the way, the fastest gains of the biggest gains of anybody in the country. 1 out of 50, right? We're number 1. And I grew up in an era of being told that Mississippi was last in everything, right? That, we were always going to be last. I can remember watching late night TV and hearing jokes made about the state of Mississippi. Everybody said, thank God for Mississippi.
And we even adopted some of that thought process.
And some of that thought process leached onto the people here, where we started to be sort of defeatist in the way that we thought about ourselves. But by golly, there are good things that are happening in Mississippi, and there are good people doing those good things. You guys very frequently will feature some of the great culture and art that are coming out of the state of Mississippi, where we are, quite frankly, second to none.
Right.
When you're talking about per capita, the amount of great art, great athletes, everything coming out of this state. Good culture that's worth talking about. You're listening to the Sit Down right here on MPB Think Radio with Russ Latino. We're also doing a pledge drive for MPB this week. We're going to kick it over to Kevin and Lacey.
You're listening to MPB. I'm Lacey Alexander. Thank you for listening during this brief spring fundraising campaign. Your financial support is the way we make sure that MPB is there for you when you want it. That's here on MPB Think Radio through the Digital Education Network and MPB's television channels. Do you have 3 minutes on the only Wednesday of the drive? With ways you can help out, here's baseball expert Kevin Farrell.
There are people in America who don't know the names Russ Latino, Marshall Ramsey, Malcolm White, Felder Rushing, but you do because you're an MPB Think Radio listener. You may even be a public radio junkie. It's okay to be nerdy about something like public radio. You're in good company. Others who love it as much as you do are pitching in to help out during this brief spring campaign. We've given the number a couple of times, but we can't emphasize it enough. 888-372-4483, or go online. Make your contribution online at mpbonline.org.
Even though the Mississippi Gulf Coast has borne the brunt of a number of hurricanes over time, especially Katrina in 2005, the rest of the region is vulnerable during hurricane and tornado season. As part of our public service mission, MPB Think Radio is part of the MDOT Emergency Preparedness Response and Information efforts. We provide up-to-the-minute information on weather conditions, evacuation alerts, emergency assistance, and shelters. Your donations to MPB Think Radio strengthen this not-for-profit public service. Please do your part right now and stay tuned to MPB for updates during severe weather.
There are people who give to MPB to support nonprofit journalism and local discussion programs each year. Everyone gives according to their capacity, but anyone can give any amount to MPB Think Radio and really help make a difference. Whether you decide to invest $100 or $1,000, you have in your heart the same motivation that drives others to give. Quite simply, they feel better informed and get a sense of well-being listening to MPB. The important thing is to act on your convictions and show leadership by making your contribution right now. You can call or text the word GIVE to 888-372-4483 or go online to mpbonline.org. You'll be able to see all the thank you gifts we offer and make your contribution as well.
We all support organizations we believe in, whether that's a music organization, a faith-based organization, visual arts, public broadcasting. We give to our passions and often support several cultural organizations at once. Today is the day to give for the love of Mississippi. If MPB is something you support each year with an investment of $1,000 or more, thank you. If not, we would like to be on your radar because MPB brings the world to you and to thousands of others you'll never meet. 24 hours a day. Consider donating $1,000 or more right now at 888-372-GIVE, 888-372-4483, and at mpbonline.org.
When you make a contribution of $100 right now, we can guarantee you'll get a ticket for the next edition of the Mississippi Antiques Showcase. It's May 2nd and 3rd at the Inn and Ole Miss in Oxford. We're happy to thank you with one ticket when you pledge $100 or two tickets when you pledge $200. Each person will have one item appraised, plus there's going to be food, beverages, and you'll receive MPB membership. The tickets always go fast. If you'd like to attend and don't need an item appraised, we're happy to thank you with your $60 donation by sending an audience ticket. So call the number 888 888-372-4483 or go online, mpbonline.org.
For decades, people have come forward for the first time to support MPB. They relied on it, they thought about how much they listened, and they gave what they thought was fair. Now it's your turn. 888-372-4483 or mpbonline.org, and thank you.
You're listening to The Sit Down right here on MPB Think Radio. I'm your host, Russ Latino. I've been promising you some conversation about Liberation Day. What are we being liberated from? Well, President Trump says that we are being liberated from the need to buy foreign items, to import foreign items. It is anticipated today that the United States will implement 20% tariffs on virtually all items coming from our trading partners. There are a lot of economists who are pretty concerned about this. I thought we'd spend a little bit of time today maybe talking about what's at stake, what it means for Mississippi. And there are going to be different points of view on this, right? Some people may hear what I have to say and disagree, and I understand that's just part of these kinds of conversations. But I wanted to give you at least my insights into what's being debated here. So the idea of a tariff is not actually a tax on another country. I know people have sort of adopted this idea that, hey, we're going to put a 20% tariff on China as an example. But when Walmart imports a boatload of televisions from China, which they do frequently, the nation of China does not write a check to the U.S. Treasury. That's not how a tariff works. Instead, a tariff is a tax that is paid by the domestic importer, in this case, Walmart, right? So they would pay the 20% tax on those televisions that they are importing. The way that ends up working for consumers is that typically importers like a Walmart will then increase the price of a television. And so statistically speaking, what it looks like is about 95% of tariffs get paid by a domestic company and or the consumers of that domestic company. The end result of it is that prices will go up, right? Prices on consumer goods will go up. The other part of this that doesn't get discussed very frequently is that it's not only final stage products that get imported into the United States. So there's a lot of conversations around this topic that focus on bringing American manufacturing back. Is one of the sort of talking points that we hear quite frequently. The reality is that American manufacturing is more productive now than it was 50 years ago. It's producing more, it's selling more, it's exporting more than what it was 50 years ago. Part of what has led to a reduction in the number of people working in manufacturing is technology and automation, right? They've become much more efficient at producing things. But the other thing that people need to understand is that 1/3 of every component part that is used by an American manufacturer to make an American product gets imported. And so if we are adding tariffs to the component parts that manufacturers in the United States use, that also raises prices. The last thing that people need to understand is that the effect of raising prices is to reduce demand. This is like economics 101, right? If you were a freshman in high school and you took economics, you learned about the law of supply and demand. As prices on things go up that American manufacturers are making, the end result of that is that there will be less demand for that stuff, right? And so as an example, if you're Nissan in Canton and you're already facing considerable headwinds from an automotive industry that has really, really tight margins right now, the end result is that you're going to have to increase the price of your vehicles that you're selling, which means that you will sell fewer vehicles. What does that mean in Mississippi? Well, it means that if you work at Nissan in Mississippi, if they're making fewer vehicles, they need fewer employees. And so the consequence of a prolonged tariff war or trade war is that you're going to reduce the production of American manufacturers, which means that you'll restrain the growth of the economy. There will be fewer jobs. The other part of this that I think folks need to understand is that it not only affects domestic consumption, right? What happens in Mississippi, but it affects the ability of Mississippians to export products. And so, as an example, Mississippi exports a lot of agriculture, an awful lot of agriculture. And our three biggest trading partners, as I understand it, are Mexico, Canada, and China, that we export agriculture to. And so, as we implement these 20% tariffs, assuming that's what happens today, then these other nations are going to implement what are called retaliatory tariffs. They're going to do it back to us, which means that our exporters in the United States will export less stuff to other countries. And exports make up about 10% of the U.S. economy, so it's not a small number. And so the effect on that is that farmers will have fewer markets to sell their products to. And again, that's a tight margin business. So what we saw as an example back in the first Trump administration, where there were more targeted tariffs on China, was that almost all of the revenue that came in from domestic importers paying the U.S. Treasury for items imported from China, almost all of that revenue just got moved straight to farmers in subsidies that were needed to make up for the losses that farmers were experiencing because of the tariffs. This is a complicated issue. Certainly, there are an awful lot of people who want to see more domestic manufacturing. They want to see more things bought in America from Americans. And those are noble sentiments. I think at some level, what's being discussed, though, and there's a reason that what you see from almost universally from economists, is that this is going to raise prices and lower economic growth. And that's a bad thing for Mississippians, particularly Mississippians that sell automobiles, that engage in manufacturing, that grow crops. And so the hope would be that whatever happens here, to the extent that this is an opportunity or an attempt to level the playing field or to enter into better trade deals, at least from this pundit's perspective, that happens quickly so that Mississippians do not end up being hurt by this national debate. It's going to be really interesting to watch the actual announcements right at the close of the stock market today. All of that doom and gloom will be followed by a pledge drive. Look, it's been great to be with you today. The sit down is brought to you by MPB listeners who are also supporters. I say this seriously. We offer a diversity of program, a diversity of thought that I think is valuable to the state of Mississippi. This is radio for the community, supported by the community. And we'd invite you to give now at 888-372-4483 or do your part online at mpbonline.org. Joining me in the studio again are Lacey and Kevin to close out the program. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you so much for listening to MPB Think Radio on the only Wednesday of our April fundraising campaign. I'm Lacey Alexander. If MPB is part of your life on a weekly basis, now is the time to support something that's important to you and to your neighbors. Stand up for a free service that changes the lives one person at a time, from babies to seniors. Here's Kevin Farrell to tell you more.
Thanks, Lacey. Because MPB Think Radio is your local station, you may think that our hosts are only known locally, when in fact it's global through our online stream. In fact, on Money Talks, we have a frequent caller from Peru.
Ooh.
We bring the flavor of Mississippi to those who tune in through the stream or subscribe to our podcasts. Actually, you help us do that when you make a gift in any amount during drive time fundraisers. The impact you have is much bigger than you may have, though, thought of. We all do this with you as a partner. Our slogan, together through the years, together in the future. Make your contribution right now, 888-372-4483 or online at mpbonline.org.
Fix It 101 gets a lot of callers from my home state of Alabama, Kevin, but nobody from Peru. So good for you. One thing you help make happen through your donation is professional development training for Mississippi teachers. The Early Childhood Team facilitates workshops for pre-K and kindergarten teachers aligned to state standards, using PBS research-based content and MPB resources. Mississippi e-Learning for Educators provides high-quality, research-based online professional development for kindergarten through 12th grade teachers, led by top Mississippi educators. Please support all of MPB's educational efforts on radio and TV right now.
One of the more popular benefits of MPB membership that we talk about is MPB Passport. MPB sustainers who give $5 a month or more have that benefit. You'll get a special access to on-demand PBS programs through MPB. If you have Netflix or Hulu, you already know how in-demand video works. Passport is the key that opens up a world of programs like Ken Burns' most recent film, Leonardo da Vinci, a new season of Wolf Hall from Masterpiece, plus hundreds more, including some classic shows from MPB television as well. It's a free benefit to MPB supporters at the $5 a month or more level. We'd love to sign you up for Passport. All you got to do is text or call or text the word GIVE to 888-372-4483. The number is 888-372-4483, or go online, mpbonline.org.
Supporting the station at mpbonline.org is quick and easy. We hope you will consider leaving a comment when you donate. We may even try to read it on the air. Let's read a few of those comments right now. Gerald from Diamond Head made a contribution and says he enjoys our Southern Remedy shows on MPB Think Radio. Tommy from Tupelo donated and told us, I enjoy all of your programs. I've been listening for 30 years. That's how long I've been alive. Whatever it is you love about MPB, I hope you'll get involved the way Gerald and Tommy did. Call us at 888-372-4483 or give online at mpbonline.org, and please let us know how MPB Think Radio enhances your life.
There's something deeply satisfying about supporting public media. You can hear and see where every dollar goes in every story, every conversation. On the air, on the web, and on television, MPB is always trying to give you something to think about. Consider supporting MPB Think Radio with just $1 a day, about $30 a month as a sustainer. And every day you'll know that you're making a difference because it's one that you'll be able to see and hear. $1 a day. If that sounds fair to you, go online to mpbonline.org or call 888-372-4483.
There's a new way for you to support MPB Think Radio on a mobile device. Just text the word GIVE, G-I-V-E, to our normal pledge phone number, 888-372-4483. That's G-I-V-E. What happens next? We'll get right back to you with a simple way to support MPB Think Radio. In about 2 minutes' time, you'll support what you love. It's that easy. Text the word GIVE right now to 888-372-4483, 888-372-4483, and thanks.
This forecast is underwritten by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Mississippi.